So how do how do insects communicate? So one of the ways is visual cues, and that's like here we have the firefly, and if you've never seen a firefly, they're pretty cool little organisms flying around, and they glow right at the end. And they literally communicate through these visual cues, flashing of the end part of their abdomen, and this is how the males and females sort of communicate back and forth and such. And then also these chemical signals called pheromones. Now you and I have pheromones as well. A lot of animals have pheromones, but insects really use pheromones. This is how they communicate. This is how they reproduce. So termites use pheromones, chemical signals between each other to tell about all sorts of things within a colony. If a anteater comes in and breaks into their colony, they have pheromones to sort of warn the colony, right? Or moths use pheromones, and so this is how they have these huge antennae to receive these pheromones, and then they'll be able to navigate towards a higher concentration of pheromones in the air and find a mate and that sort of thing. Insects and humans. So this is a really important thing. These next couple sections I could spend years on. We're going to go over insects and humans and insect societies in class, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm going to try not to talk too much about them here, but we'll talk a little bit about them. So insects have negative effects on humans, right? So they're all around the world, and as you know, termites destroy wooden structures, moths eat your clothes, expensive suits, bees and wasps, they sting, and this can be quite painful, obviously. Locusts and other organisms cause billions, literally billions of dollars a year to crops, right? Eating them and such. That's why we've invested so much money in insecticide, whether that's good or bad. But mosquitoes, as you know, we learned in other chapters, they cause malaria, which infects millions of people per year and kills tens of thousands of people a year. But there's also many positive effects. In fact, we could not survive without them. And one of the major reasons we couldn't survive without them is because of agriculture. We're dependent on agriculture. And without insects, we would not be able to cultivate crops. And so these pollinators, right? We learned about pollination in the flowering chapter, or flowering plants chapter. And bees, butterflies, should be a comma here, wasps, moths, flies, all these things are pollinators, and without them we would not get the amount of food that we have today. They also, insects produce silk, so some people use silk for all sorts of things, wax, and even honey. And most other places in the world include insects in their diet. Actually, I just listened to a lecture by a professor that was advocating including insects in our diet to help world hunger. And so most other places eat insects for nutritional value, and maybe we should too. We can discuss that in class maybe. 2/3 of our crop pollination is contributed to bees and other animal species. And so insects are quite important for crop pollination. In order for you to have that tomato on your table, you must have a bumblebee pollinating that tomato flower, right? Otherwise, there is no tomato in your salad, right? And so 2/3 of crop pollination. So you can sort of think of it as 2/3 of your plate at dinner is contributed to insects pollinating these flowers. Wild bees, which is a great interest of mine, there's many. So honeybees, a European honeybee is a alien species, and but we have native wild bee populations, which are quite interesting and actually better pollinators, more efficient. But they have a high economic value, right? Because these crops need pollinators, and they've estimated billions of dollars per year globally. If we had to pay these wild bees to do what they need to do, for us, we'd have to pay them billions of dollars per year globally. this ecosystem service of pollination is free. It's pretty amazing. And so it's overwhelming the positive effects that insects and bees have on our agricultural system and us as humans and our survival. We're dependent on them. Insect societies, I'm going to try to zoom through this. We're going to talk a lot about this in class because I just love talking about ants, bees, and termites. And we'll actually do a little lab activity with ants. We'll probably be doing some observation, doing some citizen science with other pollinators, but also bees. And then I'll show you a little quick video on termites. Investigate these, they're pretty interesting. And so they create these complex societies. We call them the social insects, and this is because they have these unbelievably complex societies. And much like ours, with specialization called castes, and they have great communication between each individual. They work together for the benefit of the whole group. It's pretty amazing. So I'll spend a lot of time describing in class, and we'll be investigating this, the different specialization and all the different jobs, and I think you will be fascinated with insect societies. Many of these colonies can be over 7 million individuals, right? So quite large in numbers. Here's just a quick photo. We're almost done here, actually. This is what they did was pump in concrete. And they killed all the ants when doing this. They pumped in concrete, and that hardened, and then they were able to excavate this ant colony. You can see here's a human, right? He's excavating. Here's a human, right? Here, this is all the colony, all these tunnels, right? There's a tunnel here, there's a tunnel here, all these different tunnels, and then you have also these little areas right here that are circular, and those are chambers, and they serve different purposes. We'll talk a lot about this in class, but this may be, you know, the ant's garden where they cultivate food. This could be where the queen is, where she's making more ants of different types. This is where the larvae are, and other ants are tending to the larvae and making, it's like a nursery, right? So look how huge this is. It's just unbelievable, this colony. And just the size, but then we'll also talk about all the specialization that goes on here. The same thing happens here. This is a termite mound in Africa, and there's many of these. You can see it in the back. Quite large. Look how tall this is. Sometimes as tall as giraffes, and this is a tree, right? And it's taller than that. And this is all made by termites, right? And then it also goes underground all the way to the water table and such. So huge structures they build, very complex societies, many specializations that they have, individual jobs and such. We'll talk more about this. Pretty remarkable structure, pretty remarkable set of organisms. Here's some questions.